Hello, welcome back to the Boot Room. Andy, Warren and Stuart Watson here to look ahead to Ipswich Town's home clash with Bolton. Stu, the international break is done. 2 weeks on the training field, hopefully going to be beneficial to this Ipswich Town side. First real time they've had that, but they go into this game still looking for that first win of the season. None of us realistically thought that was going to be the case come the middle of September, did we?
No, we didn't. Obviously, there's been lots of positives to take from the performances thus far, but Ipswich haven't been able to get that win over the line because of a combination of individual errors that have been punished because of maybe a lack of game management at key moments. And obviously, as much as everyone knows that this has been big changes and it is going to take realistically a bit of time for it to settle, every missed opportunity is points that need to be made up for further down the line. So Ipswich, by hook or crook, need to find a way, even in the midst of this gelling process, to start getting one or two wins over the line before that table starts to take shape. Around the 10-game mark normally we talk about. So we're 5 league games in now. This is an interesting month coming up for Ipswich, September. So yes, Bolton at home next. Let's see what happens.
We'll get onto the game itself in a minute, but in terms of the team, it's kind of giving with one hand, taking away with the other for Ipswich at the moment. Those 2 weeks on the training field look and sound as if it's going to mean that George Edmondson is finally ready for an Ipswich debut. Christian Walton potentially could come in for an Ipswich debut, but news today that one of the most exciting signings that we've seen during this transfer window so far, Kyle Edwards, is not available. He's got a short-term knock that's going to keep him out just for a little while, and no Bersant Salina yet. So got players coming into this side, but players coming out of it as well.
Yeah, Paul Cook's not shied away from the fact that he's got a power-packed squad now for League One level, probably bigger than he anticipated having, but the Morsey and Salina deals came late. He has got depth now, good players in every position to choose from, and if everyone's fit. Obviously, Ipswich's injury record of recent years would suggest that that's a luxury that very rarely happens. But when that happens, there are options. And even with those players missing, good players that you mentioned, there are still options for Paul Cook going into this game. Picking his bench is still going to be a difficulty. We'll have a stab at it. I think by process of elimination, we can work out who the two home debutants that Paul Cook's spoken about will be. With Morsey and Salina unavailable, you would imagine that has to be Christian Walton going straight in goal on loan from Brighton, and George Edmondson finally to make his long-awaited debut, signed from Rangers with an unspecified knock. It sounds like he was pretty close going into that Wimbledon game a fortnight ago, a couple of weeks on the training pitch. So it sounds like he will be going in to the heart of defence, and you would imagine that will be to partner Cameron Burgess, which could very well be the central defensive duo for many weeks to come, which would be Luke Wolfenden missing out there, which is maybe a little harsh on him, because I thought, despite a slightly casual start to the season, I thought he looked like he'd improved with Cameron Burgess alongside him and did pretty well in that Wimbledon game. But it will be Edmondson and Burgess, you imagine. The fullbacks will be Vincent Young and Coulson. They're the fullbacks of choice. Coulson came off to a standing ovation, didn't he? Of course, in that Wimbledon game. Vincent Young, I think, by his own admittance, is still slowly building back up to his best after those long-term injuries. Midfield, even without Morsey, my guess, Andy, would be Evans and Harper to continue, but Paul Cook did name-check Tom Carroll as having an outstanding couple of weeks on the training pitch during this break. And any argument that he might force his way into it?
Not for me just yet. I think Evans and Harper are the pairing to be going on with. I think we could see Carroll as a bit of a situation player. In my opinion, I think he's one to come on in games and change the pace of it, either in terms of slowing the game down and holding onto the ball, or in terms of coming in to recycle the ball quicker and move it to players. So I think from a starting lineup perspective, I'd still be going Evans and Harper at this stage. I'm going to call Carroll a luxury player. Sometimes that can be a bit of damning with faint praise, but I mean that in the best way possible with him, because I think he can come on in matches, hopefully it's earlier than he has done sometimes, maybe, and change the tempo of things. I think he's going to be a really useful player for Ipswich at this stage, but I wouldn't be breaking up the partnership just yet.
When Morsey's back, midfield options galore there as well, because not only the players that we've mentioned, John Nolan is fit again and back on the training pitch, and Idris El Mazouni, who impressed in the Cup and has caught the coach's eye in pre-season by all accounts, is another option there as well. So lots of central midfield options. Then we get to the front end of the team, which is always very interesting, isn't it? Carl Edwards obviously out on this occasion. Selina not ready yet. And still, look at these options. My stab at it would be a return to what we saw on the opening day of the season against Morecambe. It sounds like Connor Chaplin's been back and training for a little while now. So on that basis, I'll put him in. And he started as the number 10 against Morecambe. So I think he'll be in as the number 10, which would mean Scott Fraser back out on wide left again, which I don't think anyone is hugely enamoured with thus far. But these are scenarios that face Paul Cook, which would have Wes Burns on the right. A slight doubt about him because he's been carrying this Achilles problem, which can be a bit of ticking time bombs. But you would imagine he'd be on the right, and then up front, Macaulay Bond's been back in training, and you would imagine if he's fit, he takes his place back in the team after that really impressive brace against MK Dons. Missed out against AFC Wimbledon. I'm not sure Joe Pigott did quite enough to stop Macaulay Bond taking his place back in the team. Any thoughts on that front four?
It's got to be Bond. I think it has to be Macaulay Bond from what we've seen so far. I think he offers the best all-round package of between him and Pigott at the moment. So it's got to be him. Ride the hot hand. I think Burns is a nailed-on one in there. And I think of those available, who else are we factoring into that? Would Barry and Aluko are the two that you'd maybe think about, isn't it? But
yeah, and obviously Joe Pigott as well. There is the option to go with the two up front of Pigott and Bond and go with both of them. But I'm not sure against a Bolton side that play 4-2-3-1 that play some decent football, possession football, that leaving yourself kind of understaffed in the centre of midfield. The reason you've gone out and signed Sam Morsey is to try and give yourself a bit of bite in a midfield that perhaps wasn't breaking the play up enough. I think to sacrifice an extra player there might be unlikely, I would guess. But that team that I've just gone through, that still leaves out Halagki now as your second choice goalkeeper, Danassian, Wolfenden, Penny, Carroll, Aluko, Barry, Pigott, Norwood, who I think is probably working his way back to fitness now, and Caden Jackson as well. So there's 10 players there, and you've got to get a 7-man bench out of them, with Selina to come back, with Morsey to come back, with Carl Edwards to come back, Nolan, Enciala, I haven't mentioned. It's man management's going to be a big task for Paul Cook when, hopefully, everybody is fit.
I'll be interested to have another look at Connor Chaplin. I think we didn't see him at anywhere near his best on that opening day, did we? I think he was undercooked and not necessarily ready to go. Yes, he played in the middle on that day with Fraser to the left, and they combined really nicely for Fraser's goal, didn't they?
Lovely goal.
We want to see Fraser in the middle, but if those two can combine to get Fraser into those positions, I think that's how you are going to get the best out of Fraser. Wide, he's not a winger. He's kind of an inside attacking midfielder. So if those two can link up like that, it's something that Ipswich can work on.
Yeah, and obviously with Coulson bombing on, sort of to provide that width down the left-hand side, that is what this system is meant to be, with those wide players maybe drifting inside and being a little bit more intricate, which Scott Fraser clearly can do. But Chaplin and Edmondson coming into this side, let's not forget that these are the two players that Mark Ashton spoke about being the tipping point in the transfer window, the one that championship clubs were going, we wanted them, fair play, to attract those two players to Ipswich Town was big business. So yeah, same as you really, looking forward to seeing a bit more of Connor Chaplin. Slightly quiet debut, had a little injury setback since then, and it's easy for him to become a little bit of a forgotten man, but this is a player that was played a central part in a Barnsley side that finished in the playoffs last season. So this could be the game for him, and he'll know that there are players breathing down his neck to come back with Selena and whatnot. So I'm sure he'll be wanting to really make his mark against Bolton tomorrow.
Absolutely. That's the team that we think may go for this game. For Ipswich, what are you expecting from this game? We asked Paul Cook about this morning. He was speaking about it, wasn't he? And it was another, I don't think this is going to be 0-0, lads. Saying that, Bolton's last game was 0-0, and they've had a bit of a funny season. They've had their first 2 League One games of the season, both ended in 3-3 draws. They've since had a couple of 0-0 draws in there and drawn a couple of blanks as well. So they're a team that have certainly done a decent job, made a decent fist of this after coming up from League Two. They've had a solid start, couple of wins, drawn plenty of their games as well, and they're no mugs, are they?
No, I looked at it. They finished last season like an absolute train, didn't they? In many ways, they're perhaps poster boys for Ipswich in terms of what you can achieve after a slow start to a season. They have lost 4 times over 90 minutes in their last 31 matches. So this idea of Ipswich getting a win tomorrow, that gives you the task that they're up against. Bolton haven't lost that many games from January onwards. It's pretty much the bulk of the team that kind of took them to promotion last season with 1 or 2 extras along the way. Owen Doyle, we know, has scored goals throughout his career up front. I like Sarkovic as the number 10 in behind him as well. Yes, they drew 0-0 at home against Burton on Monday night in front of the Sky cameras, but by all accounts, played really well in that game. I read Ian Everett's comments after the game, and he said everyone in the country can now see that Bolton Wanderers are on their way back. And I don't think anyone can begrudge Bolton their their moment over the last 12 months or so after that horrible situation they went through financially and with relegation as well. Bit of history there with Bolton going right back to the playoffs and everything. So 2 teams that both want to play entertaining football, both play with the same 4-2-3-1 formation. I think, again, we've got all the ingredients for this to be a really entertaining game at Portman Road.
Go on then, let's end with some predictions. Are Town going to get off the mark in terms of wins this season, Stu? What's your result prediction for this one?
I don't know if this is more heart than head based, but I will predict a win. For the reasons that I've just outlined, this is another tough game for Ipswich Town in the midst of their gelling process, but I'll go for a 2-1. I just think the quality of player that Ipswich have on the pitch, plus that backing of the home crowd, maybe a few lessons learnt from the previous games, might just see them over the line this time. I hope so, because I think when they get the first one, more should follow.
I've got 2-1 written down as well. So there we go. You heard it here first. Hopefully that comes true, and hopefully Ipswich Town get off the mark this weekend with a home victory over Bolton.